Today I want to talk about sugar and sugar alternatives, because let's be honest, we all do love our sugar and sugary things or sweet things, but many of us actually want to reduce our amount of sugar that we consume because we either have a weight loss goal or we're just looking at the health benefits of reducing sugar. There's some studies showing that sugar might actually increase inflammation in the body, and it also might be addictive. So, many of us actually look towards sugar alternatives as a healthier option. So today I actually want to go a little bit into depth in terms of the sugar alternatives and whether they are actually healthier and whether they actually are helping you achieve your goal. So first off, let's start with white sugar. So white sugar is the most common sugar we all know, and if we look at the amount of carbohydrates per 100 gram of white sugar, we see that there's about 99 grams of carbohydrates. Now it's important to look at the carbohydrates because this is actually what's going to cause the insulin response in the body, which has all the other effects, like for example storing fat if it's used in excess, and also increasing inflammation, for example. So often what I see is people think, okay, well, brown sugar is healthier than white sugar because we have this common, rule of thumb that brown products are healthier than white products. If you're looking at, for example, brown bread versus white bread, brown rice versus white rice. But unfortunately, when it comes to sugar, that's completely a myth. They're basically the same. If we look at brown sugar, has 98 grams of carbohydrates per 100 gram compared to 99 grams in white sugar. So they're basically the same. White sugar was just taken one step further in the processing, but both of them come from sugarcane and they both have the same effect in the body. So swapping your white with brown sugar actually doesn't do you justice. Another one we see often is honey. So sugar is often replaced with honey because we believe it's natural, it comes from bees, so it means it has to be healthy. But unfortunately, if we look at honey, it has about 83 grams of carbohydrates per 100 grams, so very close to sugar. So it's actually not really decreasing the amount of sugar in your body, or what the body is actually getting. Yes, honey has some health benefits. So if you're just swapping your sugar for honey for the health benefits of honey and not really thinking about the sugar content, by all means, you can do that. But if you really want to reduce your sugar intake, then maybe swapping to honey might not really be the thing for you. I'd rather then look at the portion sizes than just completely swapping over to honey and still having a big amount. Then we also have organic maple syrup or maple syrup. This is a hot trend at the moment. There's a lot of Instagram or YouTube videos with beautiful pancakes drizzled with loads of maple syrup and actually just giving you the idea that this is healthy. Now, maple syrup definitely has less carbohydrates. We see that it has about 67 grams per 100 gram compared to 99 in sugar. So yes, it definitely has less, but it still contains carbohydrates. So it's not a sugar-free alternative, and using big amounts of it is actually also not conducive to your weight goal. So if you're using maple syrup, also just make sure that you're not using lots of it at a time. And yes, we also know that maple syrup does have quite a few health benefits. Then another one that's also quite common, and we see it in health food shops quite often, is fructose. So people believe that swapping their sugar for fructose, let's say for example in a muffin recipe, is a lot healthier because we believe that fructose comes from fruit and fruits are healthy. But unfortunately, again, that's not the case. So fructose is quite interesting, and it follows a different pathway in the body compared to glucose that we find, for example, in sugar. So fructose actually has to go through the liver to be converted into glucose. And what can happen if we have a high fructose intake in the diet, whether it comes from soft drinks, because we know that soft drinks like Coca-Cola and so forth contains high fructose corn syrup, or we adding loads of fructose in our muffin recipes, or we adding fructose wherever we can, and we're having loads of fruits in the diet, we see that the liver can actually make a lot of triglycerides, which is a form of cholesterol. So we actually need to be careful with the amount of fructose that we consume. So by all means, I'm not saying that fruit is bad for you. You just need to be conscious with the amount that you have, and that how you have it in the day and how you spread it out. And then replacing your sugar with fructose and having fruit might not be very healthy for you specifically. So that's our, common sugar alternatives. You get coconut sugar as well. Same thing, it still contains sugar. So just be careful with the swaps that you make, that that they still contain sugar. You can always go onto Fat Secret or Google it. You'll see it quite quickly, how they compare in terms of carbohydrate content. So just quickly moving on to sweetness. So now a lot of people say, okay, well, I still want to reduce my sugar, but how do I do it? So often we go to sweetness. So we get two types of sweetness. We get our natural sweetness, which we often see as xylitol or stevia. And then we also have our non-nutritive sweetness, which is mainly made in a factory, like our canderel or equal, for example. So just jumping back to xylitol or stevia. So xylitol is actually it's quite lower in calories and carbohydrates compared to sugar, but it still does contain calories and carbohydrates. So it's just less. It's almost about half. So if you would compare 1 teaspoon of xylitol, it would be the equivalent of half a teaspoon of sugar. Then we have stevia. So stevia is extremely sweet. So the amount that they add to products is so little. So the calories or the carbohydrate content of stevia is actually negligible. So you could see that as a sugar-free alternative, but I know not a lot of people like the taste of stevia, but that is definitely an option. Then, of course, we have our non-nutritive sweeteners, which are completely carbohydrate and calorie-free, like, for example, your canderel or your sachets or your pills that you can put in your coffee and your tea, for example. So these often contain aspartame, and a lot of people are quite wary or scared of aspartame because there's some rumors, for example, going around that it might increase your risk for cancer. But the FDA and the European Food Society actually has shown that it's really safe to use if you're not, over consuming it. So I wouldn't recommend having soft, diet drinks as well as adding loads of it into your tea and coffee every single day. Try to just have some portion control when you do use sweeteners like canderel, for example. And just one last interesting thing that they've noticed in studies is when people use quite a lot of sweeteners, they've often seen that people have higher cravings for sweet things. It actually increases their cravings for sweet things. So maybe just be conscious or mindful if you are using these sugar-free alternative sweeteners, for example, whether you tend to want to, have more sugar or sweet things, or whether it actually doesn't affect you. The reason for this is basically as soon as any sweet things or any sweet taste enters your mouth, the process of insulin response already starts. So if you're adding something that actually doesn't have any glucose or carbohydrates, like for example a sweetener, then as soon as it actually hits the blood where the insulin actually needs to meet up with it, there's no sugar and it actually glucose, and it actually confuses the body, which then leads to almost like a circle that doesn't complete. And they've seen in research that your brain actually tries to complete the circle by giving you more cravings. So just be mindful of that. If you do tend to have more cravings because you're using sweetened things or sugar-free alternatives, maybe opt for the more natural options and just keep your portions smaller. What I've noticed is just decreasing it over time helps. So let's say you're taking 3 teaspoons of sugar in your coffee, maybe for this week just decrease it to 2 every day, and then decrease it to 1.5, and just decrease it over time instead of just going cold turkey, because it can be quite a shock if you just go from very sweet to extremely bitter. So just wean yourself off of it, and you'll get used to the more bitter tastes. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, make sure to let us know, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.